All right, everybody. I just threw the countdown out there, but you didn't see it because I didn't click go live, but that's okay. All right, welcome to Google Educator Group's Asia Pacific Ignition EDU 25. This is our first event of 2025 as we prepare for our main event that's not going to be held in January like it usually is, but pushed a little bit later into the year. So as we plan, we still wanted to start the new year. We wanted to ignite our thinking about teaching and learning as early as we could in the new year. Even though many of us out there are actually in the middle of a school year, unless you might be in the global south, you're probably just about to start a new school year, particularly if you're in Australia, New Zealand, and we love y'all. So I'm Nate from Google Educator Groups in Nagoya, and here today representing Google Educator Groups Asia Pacific. We've got workshops today in English, Tagalog, Bahasa Malaysian, Hindi, mix of Hindi and English, and I think the Bahasa Malaysian as well is going to mix a bit of English in there as well. If you go to GEG Asia Pacific, or if you Google search that, you're going to find a link, but I'm going to post that a little bit later today. And at the end of these sessions too, we'll give you a link where you can download a certificate. But without further ado, I want to share my screen. In fact, gonna share my entire, no, let's do just a tab because I got a few things that have audio that I want to share with you. All right, and I'm just keeping an eye on my phone here. If you are watching in real time, please type in where you're watching from. And if you have any other ideas along with this, please share with the group. It's all about sharing, isn't it, right? Okay, let me just hit the slideshow here. All right, so this is Google Slides Ideas for Classrooms. Again, my name's Nate Gildart. I teach diploma program, history, and middle years program, individuals and societies at Nagoya International School here in Japan, which is kind of in between Tokyo and Osaka, a cool little city of about 2 or 3 million. I do educational technology consulting on the, on the side, which is why you're seeing me here, because I love how technology can enrich and enhance learning. So today, we're just going to look at a whole bunch of different ways that you might use Google Slides in the classroom beyond your traditional, typical, common way of using slides for a presentation. Some of these things are not going to be particularly innovative for many of you. Some things might be. Some things I've learned from other people. Some things I kind of came up with on my own. So if you do have your ideas, once again, please share them in here, whether you're watching in real time or whether you're watching later. Type your ideas in the comments. Whole bunch of ideas. We're going to start with the smaller ones that are quick to explain, and then we're going to get into some of the ones that are a little bit, I guess, longer for class activities. So without further ado, let's get started. And we're only 3 minutes in, and the ideas are coming already. Got my Earl Grey going on here to keep my throat nice and dry. Excuse me, nice and wet. All right, so this one's just a little short. There are many different ways you could use brain breaks, but let's start with the check-ins. My friend Mel, if you see her on Twitter, @Funguli, check it out. I got this. Well, basically, this was an idea, but she took it to the next level and started coming up with these check-ins for classes, and she has a whole bunch that she shared with the world in Google Slides, as well as the former Jamboard. So I just want to recognize Mel because she inspired me. I thought she was doing some cool stuff, and so I started making some of my own. So, you know, sometimes it's nice to do a check-in with your students, see how they are. For me, I'll just project a slide when they come in, and they see that they got to be thinking about this. Okay, how am I feeling? How am I really feeling on a scale of 1 to 6? And then you can have a, hey, hands up, or, you know, close your eyes, thumbs up if you're a 1, if you're a 2, 3, that kind of thing, and give you a sense of like how the students are feeling. I tend to do these, well, usually at the beginning of a school year, the beginning or end of a unit, or even around a time where students, you know, are going to get a bit stressed, you know, before, after exams, or if they have like some kind of major thing going on where, you know, as a group, they might be a little bit busier than usual. So here's how you feeling on a scale of Baby Yoda. I like to use GIFs for these as much as possible, just because they're a little bit, you know, they're kind of fun. I use this on a scale of Halloween because their second quarter began just before Halloween. And of course, Christmas is kind of fun for those who celebrate Christmas. And I've got to put my little daughter in there once in a while. I use this at the beginning of the school year just because my students are so wonderful to my little girl. Now, here's another brain break I think is kind of fun because I do teach history and social studies subjects. Once in a while, I'll say, okay, we need a brain break. People aren't really focused. Put this up there. What do you think they are? Speculate. When was it made? What's it made of? Who might have made them and where in the world? Just to kind of shift gears from what you're doing, but also keep it kind of related to the subject area. So for me, again, social studies subjects. And if you're curious, on the left, those are ancient Egyptian bikinis, which tells us a lot, right? So at least ancient Egyptian women who were elite or could afford it would go hang out at the beach or by the river, right? And on the right side, we have Etruscan false teeth, which are essentially about 2,000 years old. In fact, beyond that, because the Etruscans came before the ancient Romans. So we're looking at even maybe about 2,500 to 3,000 years ago. Shows that human beings have similar ideas to what we have today. That's kind of neat. Remember, put your ideas in the chat there. I'm following along with my phone. Another idea for a brain break that I think might be kind of fun. I got this idea from GeoGuessr. You might want to choose a video that it doesn't say exactly where it is. This is from my JapaneseHistoryTrip.com website and YouTube channel. But essentially, if you're going to, you want to make sure it's already.
We're at Shibuya Crossing, Shibuya Scramble, or Shibuya Kosaten. Right? One of the busiest.
Here, for example,
interestingly enough, this in 1885 was really just a small.
Let's mute that. Okay, where do you think it might be? Look at the buildings, look at the language. I mean, this is a pretty simple one if you live in Japan, right? Or perhaps even Asia. But this kind of thing would be a fun brain break as well, right? So let me just kind of pull that out there. Loads of 360 videos on YouTube. Find a place and say, hey, where is this? Or what do you think they're doing? Even just show a photo. What's going on here? Just to get people thinking a little bit more, right? Okay, let me just go escape, and I'm going to pull this up again because we got video. All right. So those are some check-ins, a couple of ideas for brain breaks. I would love to hear your ideas for brain breaks because I want to kind of add to my repertoire as well. And I'm talking about the brain breaks that you're taking a brain break from what you're doing in the class, but you're still using your brain. Brain breaks, of course, could be, you could project with Google Slides, do 5 jumping jacks, then turn around 5 times. Maybe great for the younger students, right? Again, get the body moving kind of thing. You figure that out for your class and context. Let's look at some lesson starters. So something I do like to do, not all the time, but at certain pinch points, the beginning of a section of activities or beginning of a unit or something like that. I like to have a provocation already projected on the board as students are walking into class so that they know I'm going to be asking you about this question that's on the left, right? Note on the right side, I do have a point of writing, this is what we're doing today. This is what we're learning today. And if there's anything due, I make a note of it. And of course, I have the date at the bottom. But the idea is they come in and they see the question. This is a provocation, and it relates to what we're going to do in the class. And usually I'll say, okay, everybody, you got 1 more minute, if you haven't already, to think about that question. Then I give them about, 30 seconds to talk to the people at the table, or maybe 1 minute. And then we have a very brief 1 or 2 minutes of chatting with the class. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? So again, I do this with all levels. I try to connect it to their lives as much as possible. Of course, hopefully we're doing that with everything. How can you as an individual exercise political power? I mean, this is for a group of students in grade 9. So obviously they can't vote yet, but they can exercise political power in this, this was in a civics type of course that we were doing. But again, it gives them something to think about, and it's related to them. Oh yeah, right, I can't vote, but how can I exercise political power? And again, that's projected on the board as students are walking into class. It's just one slide, but that routine kind of gets them ready for each day. And of course, it could be a video. Students might come into class and I might have a question on the side here. Sometimes I will have a question there. And then I'll play the video and they'll have the question. You can see this with, oh, I didn't put the other one in there. But basically, we watch a video that's usually only about 30 seconds long, maybe 1 minute. And then they talk with their group and then we have a chat as a class. Note these lesson starters, they're only about 5 minutes from start to finish. Think about it for yourself for a minute. Talk with your group for a minute. Then group class discussion for, about a minute or 2 kind of thing. And I notice we have some more people watching. So please tell us where you're viewing from. And if you have any ideas or resources or links to share, please put them in the comments. That would be super awesome. Okay, so again, these are just ways to start the class. Now, another way we start the class, obviously, not every day perhaps, but we like to do review, and especially in subject areas like history, political science, econ, you definitely want to be reviewing. I would argue any subject actually you need to review before you build on to the next stuff, right? So again, using slides for review, here's one way. So after I've done a section, this is Japanese history, by the way, note I've got number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 here. I'll project this simple slide and I'll say, okay, for 1 minute, I want you to think about 2 of these, 2 of the numbers, take your pick, and think about how you would describe the significance to what we studied in the last little bit, right? I might write on the board. Sometimes I do have text written down with a question, but usually it's choose one of these 2 circles or one of these 2 images. How does it relate to the end of Japanese isolation? Really simple. They do that for a minute, thinking on their own. Then I get them to chat for about 2 minutes with people in the class. And then I start drawing on people randomly. I ask for volunteers. I've got little wooden spoons with students' names on them. We call them the spoons of knowledge. Pull them out. Oh, so-and-so. What number did you choose? Oh, I chose number 3. What is it? Oh, it's the Boshin War. These are daimyo and samurai plotting to fight against the government. And it was significant because it freaked out foreign powers that wanted to Japan open up. We're down to 3. I guess this isn't working for some people. Okay. So this is one way to do it. Another thing too, very simply, I've got the text question in there, and how can these sources explain why Japan lost the war? And so in this case, I would have students again think on their own and then share with the group. But now they have to look at all 5 of them, right? So whereas this one, it's you choose a couple. This one, you look at them all. And of course, then you have a class discussion afterwards. Now, again, depending on the subject, I know in history, social studies, sometimes there's a lot of names, a lot of people. I feel it's very important to put faces to the names. So here's a way that you can use slides very simply to review. Here are the 5 people. What role did they play in China in the early 20th century? Or you could say, the fall of the dynasty and then the establishment of the republic, that kind of thing. Sometimes these are in particular order right now chronologically, but you might want to mix them up, but that kind of thing as well. Again, visuals, 2 terms, people, places, events, and that I think it really does help. Again, using terminology, simple project this on the board, and you get students to talk about take your term and give an example. Take your term, give an example. And again, that's the beginning of class review. Same thing with concepts, regionalism, nationalism. How do these relate to conditions in Italy, for example, at the beginning of the 20th century or at the turn of the 20th century and before World War I? Again, very simple review, just one slide. They think on their own, then they talk to their table buddies, and then as a whole class, you chat. Sometimes this might be a visual, like a graph or a chart or something like that. They have to actually analyze this. This is also practicing a skill. At least in history, you might get this in a test or an exam where you need to use this. And of course, it's a life skill as well. So here's another example. Look at the data, interpret it. What are you seeing? Now, another thing too, this I just ripped completely from our textbook kind of thing. Key elements of whatever the concept or the term is, have students kind of think about what the overall things are. You'll notice here I've got them blocked out because all I do is go to the next slide and say, okay, yes, after we've had our discussion, which ones did we miss? And that kind of thing. All right. And another one too, I do like the idea of using Freyr models. What I'd probably do is block out this and then say, okay, industrialization expands, explain each one. And then in the next slide, I've got the text to appear. I should have organized that a little bit better. So again, these are just some ways to review in class a little bit. Now let's look at critical thinking and analysis. And again, think about your grade level, your subject area, and that kind of thing. My background is social studies, but picture how you could do this in your teaching context. So critical thinking and analysis. This could be an art history class or an art class. It could be English, it could be history. In this case, it is a history class. But essentially, I project a painting, and I get students to analyze the painting. I don't tell them who made it. I do have the source at the bottom. Maybe I won't put that in there in the beginning, and then I'll show them the source origin or the provenance a little bit later. But here are the questions, and talk to your table buddies. Think to yourself, then talk to your table buddies. What's going on? I love this one actually because it gives us a lot of stuff to think about in terms of the Enlightenment. And again, it's a chance to practice analysis and critical thinking, right? Here are some examples I'm going to give you of how I use political cartoons. And again, anything that's a visual, you can do this with. But what I want you to notice is how I'm using shapes in Google Slides to really highlight this for students. So I give them the question, which is here in black. Then I give them a little bit of support, what the text says. Obviously, we've studied this before, so they do have some context. And after a class discussion, then the next slide, all I do is copy the slide, paste it. So I make 2 copies of the slide. But in the second one, then I add a shape and I make it transparent in the middle. And note that I've made the border colors of these shapes a little bit different so that I can highlight what we're going to discuss, like the analysis. And there's a third slide here, which explains this is how I would answer this question. And again, if you just joined us, tell us where you're, we haven't got anybody, you're a bunch of shy people out there. I can see people are watching, but where are you viewing from? And do you have any other ideas for how you might use Google Slides and you know, post in the comments a link to a good resource or something, brain breaks with Google Slides or, you know, that kind of thing. So anyway, note here that I've got the color coding. What I actually do, I don't have in here for some reason, but what I started doing is taking the red and then highlighting the text in red as well that goes with this section. So what here is the green. This is the Japanese government connoted by the student seems indignant. So this text I would make green. And then the caption, this one I would make brown. That gives even more context to the students and helps them really understand it. My students like when I do this, by the way. I've asked them a number of times, different grades and levels and classes, and they say, yeah, it's helpful. Sometimes you might have just text. Could be a piece from literature that you're doing. It could be a provocation within a chemistry class, biology, whatever. You project this here, you ask the students, and then you have your discussion, and then you highlight in different color, obviously, on the next slide, the main points that you want to pull out. Again, this is for history, it's source analysis, but you think about what you might do in your teaching context. Here's another one. Again, source analysis, but I'm focusing on teaching the idea of denotation and connotation. So, you know, here's going a little bit deeper than just finding out the message in the source, but actually building our vocabulary. So this is what the students get. They think to themselves and they have a chat. Then I, you know, give them the ideas of what connotes what denotes what. And then we talk about more specifically how you could write it. Note here now, I'm using probably about 5 or 6 copies of the same slide where I'm just changing slightly the focus of each slide. So that's a longer activity. Same idea here, right? Source analysis. Again, I should have the color in there. I do on my master slides, actually, for my classes, but not for this one, unfortunately. Oh, losing people again. All right. Graphic organizers, Google Slides, Google Drawings are great for graphic organizers. You can do much more than, say, a Google Doc, right? Or Teams or whatever. Sequence flow charts. This is the kind of thing that you create and then maybe you share in Google Classroom or make copies in Toddle or, you know, whatever platform you're using. And then students can manipulate and work on it. And you just project this and say, okay, sequence flow chart. What is the process? You could do this as review, or you could have a reading that goes along with it. And then they go through, maybe you have a textbook, maybe you have a digital document. Students read, and then they put it in order. Always discuss, like, what is a sequence, right? You have to talk to them about that kind of thing. I always review the particular skill or term or that kind of thing before we do it. And then, of course, on your second slide, you've got the process here. Of course, you could do this one by one. Each thing appears as you want. That takes more time, but that's fine too. Hexagonal thinking, why not do this in Google Slides? Let me just take that slide show out. Basically, you can create this, and then if you create it so that everything is moved around and students just have that one central idea, then students can type in their ideas based on a reading, or maybe if it's review, and they can drag it and put it into the place, making those connections. Let me just put all these back the way that I want them, by the way. So that's hexagonal thinking. I think it's a pretty cool activity. You can do it in Google Slides. I say Google Drawing as well, to be honest with you. All right. Tell us what you're thinking, folks. Tell us what you're thinking. And there is an example of what it looks like finished. This is a small one, of course. Students do like that activity. Another one's an anticipation guide, right? In the middle, you've got a certain number of statements. Before students read or watch a video or whatever, on the left side, they either agree or disagree with the statement. Again, you make this in Google Slides, and then you share it to your learning management system and make a copy for every student. And then they manipulate it on their own. So basically, statement in the middle, students agree or disagree and explain why on the left, in the left side column. And then they watch a video or they read something. They have a discussion with other people about whether they agreed or disagreed. And then they can go and make a change to they still agree, or they now disagree, or they've changed their thinking. I still agree, but I didn't think about this, which I think is important to acknowledge or recognize. And of course, you have a class discussion about this. Remember, you don't always have to have a class discussion about everything you've done, mind you. Just saying. Graphic organizers, right? Mind maps. I'd say this is a good review activity. I mean, it could be a class activity where you've got this projected. Students have to, do a reading or watch a video or use a resource and then find out. And then, of course, you've got this to say, yes, of course, these are the different things. Again, mind maps, we've used these a million times as graphic organizers. I think they're also good for teaching systems. This is an example of when I was reviewing, I projected this and I said to students, okay, you've got the visual here. Explain the cadets' system. Go. And, they could do it in writing, or they could have group discussions, or, that kind of thing. But also, I mean, this did take me a while to create. You notice there's a lot of little pieces here, but it's better than anything I found on the internet or even a textbook, to be honest with you. It puts it all together. So this is my resource now that I could use for my own class. But teaching systems, right, through graphic organizers with Google Slides, it's great. And this is the kind of thing that you could download the PNG or JPEG and then put it on your wall, right? Again, graphic organizers, this is the Freyer model. It's also called placemat. This is something that, you would have, obviously, these blocks would be empty. Maybe have the first one to get the first bullet for each to get students started. Maybe it's a jigsaw. I mean, it's a Freyer model placemat, but, it's not for concept development. It's really just for getting ideas down, but it could be done as a jigsaw as well. Google Slides can also be used for Venn diagrams. There's a way you can change the colors in this. In fact, let me do that right now. Note here with the red one. Whoa, let me just get my circle here. If I was to go up to my color palette here and go to custom, and I just change the transparency a little bit, let's see what happens. Note now I've got a deeper red right here, but a lighter red, a little more pinkish right here. So you can use slides for Venn diagrams as well. Good for a class activity. And again, Google Drawings, you could do that too. Okay, now I want to get into talking about some extended activities. So these are a little bit longer. This is where I use Google Slides to project the instructions and the detail, but students either have whiteboards or paper, sometimes their computer, with another document that they're working on, but I keep this projected. So this is kind of a blend of, well, you notice all of these are really a blend of students working together, possibly working on a doc or taking notes with a whiteboard, like a physical whiteboard, or maybe just chatting, right? So this one's collaborative. It's called Circles of Thinking. What I like about this is that it gets students to work together. It's not a graded discussion, but it works a little bit like that. So, for example, you're going to have students sitting. Well, you're going to have students in separate groups, right? So let's say you have a class of 10 students. I know, perfect world, right? 10. So 5 of them 5 students, will look at either all these topics, or you could assign specific topics. But actually all students are going to review, learn, and take note of these different topics. And they have to think about, whatever provocation you give. So in this case, we're studying authoritarian China. But what I've asked them is to think about key ideas, personal thoughts, but then compare and contrast what happened in China to Germany. Authoritarian China under Mao as opposed to authoritarian Germany under Hitler. So those are things that they've got to think about as they're reading through and taking their notes. And I do get them to take notes that they can use when they have their discussion. So then what happens is I get that first, I'll take 5 students at random, and they sit down in a circle, they have their notes, and they have a discussion. We do talk about discussion etiquette. We do talk about how you can get other people to talk when they're not talking. If somebody's not participating, ask them a question, or what do you think, or what did you say about this? But here's the kicker. On the outside, we have another 5 people, another 5 students. They're observing. They're not allowed to talk. They don't say anything. But at the end of the discussion, after the end of the 8 minutes or whatever time you give it, then the people on the outside give their observations. Well, I noticed that male students tended to dominate, or I noticed that 2 students spoke a lot more than other students. I noticed that there wasn't much original thinking. It was all just repeating what's in the textbook. I noticed that people didn't compare and contrast like the instructions added. I noticed that some voices were too quiet. Basically, the people on the outside are looking at how the discussion went, and they're assessing the discussion just by giving feedback, being a critical friend, right? And we talk about being critical friends. And then we switch. Then the people that were on the inside, they go and stand up on the outside, and they do stand up, and they don't take notes or anything like that. They just observe and listen. And then the next group might be a little easier for them because they're going second. It might, and they kind of saw how it works. It might be a little bit harder because they might be talking about the same things and feel like they're just repeating what's already been said. If you're worried about that, then you can assign one group the first 2 topics and the other group the next 2 topics, that kind of thing. But the idea is at the end, we always ask, like, how did it go? How did that activity go? We just invested a whole period in taking notes on this, sitting in a group talking about it, having people evaluate our group or assess it or give feedback. How did it go? What was it like to listen and observe? Did you find it easier to go first or to go second? That kind of thing. Again, if you've got some ideas, please share them here. Share the links. What could be done differently next time? When we have long activities like that, I always ask my students, how did that go? I just project it on the board, same idea. They talk in their group and, tell me something somebody else said without using their name, that kind of thing. Need honest feedback here. Another one, it's called nested activity conversations. And I always have a slide that goes first. Nested conversations. Ooh, nested conversations. That sounds interesting. What is that, you say? Again, this is all built in a slide deck. First, it says this is what nested activities are for. This activity allows for the members of the group to explore concepts introduced in a text, a document, a video, or presentation. Through the activity, individuals build a greater understanding of the material through discussion and revising their thinking. And the idea is they discuss and revise with different people. So this is how it goes. As you can see, number 1, there's a group. Usually I like an even number, 4. As a group, you read through the material or you watch the video or videos. And based on the questions, which are on the next slide, based on the questions, you are going to look at the material and you're going to take some notes, not full answers, just notes on it. Again, a piece of note paper, maybe a small whiteboard. And then they have a discussion with their 4 people in the group. What did you all get from it? What do you think were the key ideas? What was most important? Then what happens is 2 people from the group stay in the nest. They stay at their little pot of tables. And then 2 other people, they're going to move around to 2 or 3 other nests. And basically, you're going to have the same conversation with other people about what you got from it. So these are the instructions that I tell the students. Okay, everyone, now read or watch the video or whatever. You notice I have a timer here built in. I'll just tap on that. Whoops, didn't mean to do that, but right. So anyway, I've got the timer going with the questions projected. They've got their resource in some form. And then I give them time within those 15 minutes to have a discussion. Note here, the next timer didn't come up here. There we go. I've got a 5-minute timer. So you got 5 minutes as a group of 4 to talk to each other. And then two of you are going to move to the next nest. And essentially that's what happens. Note here, it says the second nest. So this is built in a slide deck, obviously, except the resource they use is different. And I've got the timing in here. I've got the questions that they can look at. But what happens is 2 people stay, 2 people travel. They go to the next nest. They're a bunch of birds, right? That's the idea. I mean, what other animals live in nests? You tell me. Tell me in the chat, because I want people putting something in the chat. What creatures live in nests? Anyway, wasp nest, hornet nest. Okay. Anyway, then they go to the second nest, right? So they start with their original group. Then they go to the first nest. There 2 people are talking with other people. And then the original 2 people in the nest, they're talking with people that came to them. Then those 2 people move again to another nest. And then in the end, you get back to your original nest. And the 2 people that traveled share with the 2 people that stayed. And of course, the 2 people that stayed had conversations with other people. You're having the same conversation multiple times, but there's always something that's either reinforced multiple times or something that came up that's important from one group that the other groups missed. It helps build your understanding. Again, this is a slide deck that I use for this activity. Works super well. And trust me, secondary students at least love it. In fact, I'm going to make a video on it sometime. Another extended activity, again, using slides. It's called Block Party. And I'll post later, School Reform Initiative in the United States. That's what these are all modified from some of their protocols. Pretty cool stuff. So this is called Block Party. And the idea is, first I tell students what a block party is. In North America, sometimes people get permission from the police and the local authorities to block off their street. And they invite all the people, as a community. They organize a party and they have music and activities for children and food and drink and that kind of thing. It's called a block party. So the idea is students are put into groups called blocks, and you have your list of topics to go through. One group might have it might be all the topics you go through with all groups. Maybe it's going to be each group has 1 or 2 that they focus on and share it with the whole group. But the idea is you sit in your block and you have a discussion about your topics, and then you're going to share out with the rest of the group. And so what I do is just change the color of these with the Google Slides. In fact, I make this in Google Slides. I'll change these to red, blue, green, or whatever. And then each group, they might have a resource they're using, but they take their notes on this. Sometimes I actually allow students to get up and move around and look at what's written in the other groups, kind of like a gallery walk. But for the most part, this is used as a reference when I ask students, okay, what did each block party have come up with in terms of this idea, this method of consolidating power, for example. You could do this with any subject, a piece of literature that you might be doing, something you've done in a biology class. I mean, you think about that, right? It's called Block Party. It's pretty cool. Round table. Let me just put that back. Round table, just like a round table discussion, right? I have a description here. A round table is a form of academic discussion, blah, 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 right? So basically, I give them some information based on, or I might give them a provocation based on something they've read or some kind of background. They discuss, have a discussion based on that provocation. And then they might make a decision. So in this case, it's a roundtable discussion. It's like, here's the problem. How would you solve it? And then they have to share. So this is kind of like a problem solving, critical thinking activity, but it's done through a roundtable discussion. And again, I've got my instructions and bullet points right there. For that one in particular, these are the topics. These are the things that they have to address. Okay, another one. Oh, my tea is a little bit tepid now. So another extended activity, thinking and decision making. I've been doing this one for like 25 years, back when I was using PowerPoint and Keynote. Now it's just in Google Slides. What I like to do, again, this is a history thing, but you can do this in other subjects. You just have to think about how might I do that. This is a decision-making activity. So instead of giving them a reading and having questions for them to answer, I have a separate document, by the way, that they work on their own. you could do that where they're working in groups with a whiteboard or that kind of thing. But it's essentially, this is a prediction activity. They are going to get the situation. They have to make a prediction based on what they think would happen. And then we look at, in the following slide, what really did happen. So I need to get the document worksheet here, but essentially you've got the situation, what you would do, and then what comes up is the what actually happened. And students are writing as we go. It takes a lot of information that breaks it up, and it gets students thinking independently as well. So, for example, for each situation, you'll be given an historically accurate description of the course of the French Revolution. You got to consider yourself someone with enough power to make a decision and write the rationale for your actions. So they're thinking, but they're also justifying, right? So here's the situation. Note I've got the image here. I try to keep the color coding looking, appealing. You're a representative in the third estate. How will you respond to this situation? So the students write their response. They explain why. They talk about it as a group. And then I say, okay, then we talk about what happened, right? I might put the text here, or might just explain. Next situation, here it is. You're representatives in the third estate. How will you respond to it? And then, of course, we have a discussion. And, again, I might have the text in here that explains what really happened. Essentially, this is the response to what happened. What happened here becomes this. What happened here becomes that, right? At the end, you can have a discussion about what would you have done differently, that kind of thing, right? So I'm just going to keep going through this. I'm not going to do the whole thing with you, obviously, but this is a good problem-solving activity, and students really do like it. It's also an empathy activity, right? What would what kind of decisions did these people at this point in time have to make, which is, I think, pretty cool. Okay, this is a long one. And again, at the end, how was the activity? How was the timing? How well did you understand the situations? Did you understand the questions and the prompts? What would you have done differently if you were the teacher? What should I do differently next time, right? That kind of thing. All righty. This is another extended activity on thinking and collaboration. So this was a grade 9 class, and we were looking at conflict. And we studied a bit of history, again, the French Revolution, but now we wanted to look at contemporary conflict, right? So I gave them these 4 sources that actually look at conflict in the world today. And essentially, this is a source analysis activity, right? Which was kind of fun. They studied before the CRAP method of assessing a website or a source that they might use for an assignment. So credibility, reliability, authoritativeness, that kind of thing. Essentially, I had them work in pairs, and they had to evaluate 2 sources and report back to the group. They had to use the CRAP method, again, currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, purpose. That was just a bit of a reminder of what kinds of things they're looking for in the source. And here are the questions that they might use to be able to do this. And again, they've already studied it, so this is a review, but in the slide deck, they can actually go back and double check if they need to. So the Global Peace Index, the students doing that, they've got a link right here to the Global Peace Index that they could look at, and they work on this particular slide where their partners would look at Global Conflict Tracker. The link is right there. And of course, they have to come up with a couple of thoughts about the currency or the accuracy or the purpose of the source, right? Again, basically, this is a collaborative activity where students are taking pre-learned skills and applying them to a new situation. Love it. And then at the end, I connected this to an assessment that they were going to do. Okay, so you're going to do some research for an assignment on your own. This is what you're going to do for the analyzing the sources you're going to use section of it, the getting started part of an assignment. Basically, this is a collaborative assignment. A collaborative activity where students are working with somebody, but they're applying skills that they have learned. All right, down to 3 people. I'm losing you again here, right? So let's kind of move on. Also, though, again, how was the activity? I encourage you to do this at the end of an activity. Project on the board. Have a little discussion with your group. What did you think? What would you do better? What would you do differently? That kind of thing. Okay, we're kind of winding down here, but here's another extended activity where you might use slides, right? This is observing, thinking, and collaborative effort, collaborative engagement, but also it's kind of like a jigsaw. So, for example, this is what I did starting the French Revolution. Maybe I should have put this first in the deck. How did the royals and aristocracy live in France in the late 1700s, right? By looking at the Palace of Versailles. So I have my instructions. This is what each person is going to do. I also had a link for a little more, other resources if they want. So basically, they might be in groups of 3. So a person would choose 2 of these out of 6. I got number 1 and 2. I want to do 3 and 6. Okay, you do 1 and 4. You do 2 and 5. You do 3 and 6. Whatever. I've got the links here where, for example, students can click out. And let me share this tab. And so now they've got the king's bedchamber, and now they can start observing. Okay, what do you think about this? What does this tell you? It also gives a little bit of text and a little context. So let me just close that at the moment. Right. So let me go back to the slide here. Let me share this tab. So another student's going to look at another VR experience, right? The virtual reality. More like augmented reality, actually. But here's the idea. Students are working together, and in group 1, they're writing their observations in a couple of different places, right? So group 1 would have 6 people. Maybe there's 3 people and they do 2 each, right? You can break up your groups the way that you want. And of course, the whole class gets their ideas and observations in here. And then you can kind of talk and consolidate at the end as a class. Remember, you don't always have to talk about stuff that you've done, as a class. In the end, again, though, I do suggest if you've spent a lot of time on an activity, how did it go? How was that? What do you think? That's feedback that's good for you as a teacher. Another example, just provocations. First, I tell students what's a provocation. Okay, this is a separate activity, by the way. A provocation is this. This is why we do it in schools. This is why we might do it in a company or a business or that kind of thing. Give them instructions, look at the provocation, think about your perspective. I'm going to go through this one quickly. Provocation 1. Do you agree, disagree? Why? Maybe this is an activity where they're walking around the class, talking to other people. Maybe it's a 4 corners debate, but again, it's a simple activity where I'm projecting on the board, but students are up and they're moving around. And of course, I go through all the provocations, and in the end, how did the activity go? What would you change? What would you do differently? That kind of thing. Okay, now we're really winding down here. Resources. Slides Mania, Slides Carnival. I tend to make up my own slides. I kind of like that. It's kind of fun. They're boring, but they work for me. But Slides Mania, Slides Carnival. Have a look. Loads of really cool stuff there. And if you want to further, look at some other ideas, I've got links to different things that you might want to check out, like thinking routines. Here are thinking routines using Google Slides. Let me just, right. You might want to use Google Slides for, I'm not going to go through all of these because it would take forever. But if you choose to have a look at these tabs, I'm going to clean up this slides deck a little bit. This is only maybe the 3rd time I've done this session, but there's some more ideas in here. If you click on these, have a look. You should be able to view and download everything. If not, send me an email because you can keep in touch with me here at Nathan Gildart on Twitter, which I'm going to be moving to Blue Sky soon, just to let you know. And of course, these other resources that I have. So I'm going to leave it at that. However, I'm going to stop sharing my tab, but I want to pull out the link to a certificate. All right, so hold on one moment. Oh, I also want to give you access to this slide deck. So let me just get a copy of the slide deck. I want to get a short URL for you. Okay. So let me go to the comments here. Link. I'm working on my own here. I don't have anybody moderating with me. Oh, so a link to the slides deck. There you go. Now let me get a certificate. If you choose to complete this Google form, you will, let me go here with my drafts. Let me copy this here. You will get emailed to you automatically a certificate. Just make sure that, okay. So link to the auto-generated certificate. So we appreciate you participating. Let me just share my screen so you can see what this looks like. All right, so this is the Form Ignition EDU 25 from Google Educator Groups Asia Pacific. Put in your email, put it in correctly, otherwise you will not get your PDF. Write in your full name as you want it to appear in the certificate. Click on the drop-down menu and choose the session that you've attended. This one in particular is Google Slides, Ideas for Classrooms. Then choose the date and then click Submit, and you will automatically get in your email a message that says thank you, and then you'll get your certificate in PDF format. It's that simple. So let me stop sharing my screen again. Let's see. Thank you so much. Appreciate you joining it. I hope you got something out of it. I'm also going to post Google Educator Groups Asia Pacific. You're going to find the other sessions at this link. We've got sessions in Bahasa Malaysian. We've got sessions in other sessions and links right here. We got sessions in English and Hindi and Tagalog, Filipino. So yeah, I mean, throughout the day, if you can't watch all these sessions throughout the day, go back because they're all going to be on YouTube anyway. So thanks a lot for joining. I'm going to end that right now. Maybe I'll see you at 4 o'clock when I talk about Google's Geo Tools. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Hope to see you throughout 2025. And we hope that this event yesterday and today is helping you ignite EDU for the rest of your year. Yeah, since 2025 just began. Thank you. And we'll see you again at 4 o'clock and maybe in some of the other sessions.